Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Thursday, September the 10th, 2020. On this episode of the Politicrat, a look at the continued response to Bob Woodward's revelations in his book Rage. And we have 54 voting days of this election season left. Get busy voting. Vote early. And do so right now. That and a few more observations here and there coming up next.
How can a president bear no responsibility for the almost 200,000 lives lost when he downplayed the virus initially and he knew how contagious and deadly it was? I don't understand how that can...
The president never downplayed the virus. Once again, the president expressed calm. The president was...
Stop. The president never downplayed the virus? Why don't you take a listen to this?
Well, I think, Bob, really, to be honest with you...
Sure, I want you to
I
be.
wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
Kayleigh McEnany not only broke her promise about never lying while in the job of White House press secretary, but she has broken that promise repeatedly and lied at least twice a day during every single appearance on that podium. She certainly lied with what she said there that you just heard. He's never downplayed the virus. You just heard the audio of Donald Trump saying that he played it down and he wanted to play it down and he continues to play it down. I still play it down, which means right now he's still playing it down. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that you have people in government lying so openly and blatantly, gaslighting you like this. It is a measure and a mark of their contempt for you and their willingness to look like absolute fools in service of their master. When the history is written, and it will be written, and it will be written by someone other than them, that history will not look kindly on people like Kayleigh McEnany.
But I have built a weapon system that nobody's ever had in this country before. We have stuff that you haven't even seen or heard about. We have stuff that Putin and Xi have never heard about before. There's nobody. What we have is incredible.
Welcome back. There's a lot to pour over, and I'm going to try to do it in a somewhat concise way. I hope you're well on this Thursday. I can say that the sky here in San Francisco is not as it looked yesterday and for much of the day yesterday, which was an orange, brownish, and in fact, fire orange at one point type of sky here across the city of San Francisco, but not just in San Francisco, all over Northern California. For much of Northern California yesterday, it was blanketed by orange and brown because you have the wildfires that are nearby here, and those wildfires have burned so many acres, and as a result, the smoke and the pollutants and the toxins get spread, and the whole area obviously is affected by the smoke and the flame, and everything looks brown and orange. And it was a one-of-a-kind experience, and I must say, quite unnerving to be here in San Francisco, California, and be completely consumed by an orange sky. It wasn't that the sky was on fire, at least not here in San Francisco. It felt as if we were living through a nuclear winter. And I have the photos to prove it. I took plenty of photos and had to document this, and took some video as well. And to even be anywhere outside, whether it be on the roof or whether it be on a roof anywhere or, outside, literally on the street, was such a dangerous thing. So this underscores the climate crisis. That's what's really going on here. We have a climate crisis, and we've been having one for years. And I need people to do this right now, among other things, as we go through these 54 remaining days of voting, because that's really how you look at this election. This is not 54 days until the election. It's 54 days until we begin to see what the results are. And of course, we're not going to see all the results on November 3rd. And Donald Trump and the White House that he is running pathetically, they all know this. So Kayleigh McEnany screaming and saying, shouting and going, well, she didn't shout. That's my words. Talking about, well, we must have the results on November 3rd. Who says such a thing like that? You're agitating for something that you know can't happen. You've had a record number of ballot requests for absentee ballots by people in North Carolina alone. 643,000. And there's going to be more. 3 times the number that there were in 2016. You know darn well that all of these votes are not going to be counted on election night. They never are. And in fact, if you look at any election, certainly in the presidential election, but any election, even when they announce the winner on election night, they are still counting votes afterwards. And when you get these news networks projecting a result, they're projecting it based upon their sources, their understanding, connections to the secretaries of state. But they're not basing it on what the final vote count is. They're basing it on other things, the percentage of votes in, that kind of thing. But the idea that those votes are all counted by 8 p.m. Eastern or 8 p.m. Pacific time is nonsense. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. In no election in the history of this country has every single vote been counted by election day, or election night, I should say. It's just never, ever happened. So for those people out there who are thinking, well, if the election results aren't tabulated all by, 8 p.m. Pacific time, then it's rigged. I mean, it's just nonsense. This is absolute fiction that you have allowed yourselves to be fed. If you were listening to Fox and right-wing hate radio, that's what they're probably telling you. And you have to be better than that. You have to use your brain instead of switching it off at the door. But there's some other things to talk about here. And I will be getting to the voting because there's some things to well, I'll just say some of it now with the voting. 54 voting days left. Okay, 54 voting days left. For those of you listening in any state in the country, no matter where you are, now is the time to apply for your absentee ballot. I'm going to start with that. Now is the time to do that. Do that now, please. It is September the 10th, 2020. 54 more days of voting. Please ask for your absentee ballot now, whether you make a phone call to your county board of elections, whether you apply on their website. I have all the links on my voting guide. Do not forget that. Do not forget that I do have a comprehensive guide to all 50 secretaries of state, their official websites, plus all the links in their websites to absentee voting, to you name it. Early voting, drop boxes, be a poll worker, your county board of elections office, municipal clerk's office, whichever, because it's called different things in different states. So I guarantee you will be covered, and all the information is coming directly from each state. So this is not information that is not verified. This is all coming from the very people who run the elections in their states. And you can't get much more official than that. So that's the thing that I do want to say. One other thing in relation to voting that has not been brought up here by the corporate news media that I think I should bring up here, because I think it's very important. I think it's very important because this is something that has a connection to voting. And in the midst of all the soap opera type of reporting that was done yesterday about this book and about the comments, and maybe I was part of that soap opera too with some of the things I said yesterday, I think it is really worth talking about Russia here for a second. And we focus on it a lot, I think, but I think we should in some ways. What we aren't focusing on, quite frankly, are the Republicans in these state legislatures who are doing all these odious things to curtail democracy and stifle your vote. That's where the media focus should be and must be. And I think one of the reasons the corporate news media does not focus so much on that is quite simply because of their knowledge that if they hammer on the Republicans for all the criminality that they are up to, they will no longer have access to Republicans. And as you know, these networks, whether it's NBC or, whomever, they love to put Republicans on because Republicans say the most outrageous things. Republicans are the party of criminality. Republicans are the ones who don't care about you. And the Republicans are the ones who are going to be arguing with the host of the show. And so that creates its own drama and entertainment for these network bosses and these folks who own the media companies. And that turns into ratings for them. Most of the Democrats, the vast majority of them, aren't there to argue with the host. They're there to give you the absolute facts. And so for these media people and for some of the people listening, facts are boring. And quite frankly, some of the Democrats are boring. So these network bosses, I think, already know that the Democrats aren't going to give those kinds of ratings on these talk shows, these Sunday shows in particular. Now, I'm not talking about the convention. Oh, yes, Joe Biden's speech got more and more people watch the Democratic convention. That's not what I'm talking about. The convention's one event every 4 years. What I am talking about is these Sunday morning shows in particular, but in other shows as well. And they put these Republicans on, and at least many of these networks do. And what you usually get is the Republican person talking over the host. So, and that for some people is entertaining. I don't find it entertaining at all. It's an absolute disgrace. And journalism is being dealt a disservice when that happens. It's really appalling. And a net result is that in the quest for ratings, what the viewer gets is absolutely nothing. And people cross-talking over each other and no information. And that's one of the big casualties of this kind of lazy ratings seeking, is that no one gets the information. The viewer is never informed. The viewer is either titillated or entertained, but at the end of the day, they've been dumbed down. I mean, that's the real story here. They have been dumbed down. So that's the sad thing here. But here's what I want to get to. And I'm going to really get to this right now. Russia. According to Woodward's book, and this is from CNN.com in the CNN politics section, Woodward reports new details on Russia's election meddling, writing that the NSA and CIA have classified evidence the Russians had placed malware in the election registration systems of at least 2 Florida counties, St. Lucie and Washington. While there was no evidence that the malware had been activated, Woodward writes, it was sophisticated and could erase voters in specific districts. The voting system vendor used by Florida was also used in states across the country. Now, why the hell wasn't that reported amidst all this information yesterday? Damn it. I mean, why was that not reported? Why was that information not reported? This is what gets me about the corporate news media. And this is why I have not the sunniest disposition about the corporate news media. Because it's all titillation and scandal, as I was just talking about. It's all about ratings. It is not about the issues. The average person watching the corporate news media can honestly attest to the fact that they are not getting any information about issues that affect them. There are no issue discussions on Social Security and its future. There are no issue discussions about Medicare and Obamacare and Medicaid. There are no town halls on that subject or any of those subjects. There are no substantive issue discussions on climate crisis and climate change. There is only spectacle. And Guy Debord wrote a book called The Society of Spectacle. And he wrote about stuff like this. The spectacle is the thing. It's powerful. But it's not everything. And then you wonder why people get disillusioned with all of this. Their issues aren't being spoken about. You don't see any real discussions in the media about food insecurity and food lines. It gets mentioned, but there's no in-depth conversation about food in this country and the lack of it. It's only when it's tied to Trump or tied to... That's when it gets talked about, and you should never be broadcasting news based on how it is tied to one individual. That's how this guy gets more publicity. And he's getting tons of it now with this book, obviously. Negative publicity, but you know what P.T. Barnum said? There's no such thing as bad publicity. Just make sure you get my name right. But that information about Russia should chill your bones. And this is the same information that Ron DeSantis a year or two ago received. He knew about this, and he said, I can't say anything about it. He said that on a news broadcast, CBS 4 in Miami. It's about a year or two ago. Probably 2 years ago. This has been known for years. The Russians had done that. They had hacked into software in 2 Florida counties, and everybody knows and talks about how crucial Florida is. The CIA knew about this. The National Security, NSA, knew about this. Why wasn't that told to the public? And by the way, since this information is old, by the way, this is old news. Why on earth wasn't that disclosed amidst these revelations yesterday? And don't give me the idea that, oh, well, it's because we don't want people to panic, like Donald Trump said. I don't want anybody to panic. Never mind the fact that he panics people every day, especially white people, when he talks about, oh, they're coming to the suburbs. And the suburbs are a third black and brown anyway. I mean, what are they even talking about? What is he talking about? But that's the thing. That's the problem. Is that you are watching a media that doesn't cover the bases. It covers the scandal and the sensationalism. I mean, yes, so he said these things about the generals being, well, I'm not going to repeat the language. I read it out yesterday. But what about this thing about Russia hacking into voting systems in Florida? And what about having a discussion about voting systems? That's the point that I want to make about that, about voting, which I think is very important. At the end of the day, Mitch McConnell has to get off his backside, but he won't. He blocked 2 election bills, 2 election security bills that would have taken care of this problem. He blocked them in 2019. That would be last year. The House Democrats in January of 2019 passed a bill for election protection and election security. Mitch McConnell did nothing, and that bill died when he blocked it in the Senate. He blocked this stuff, and the bill is toast in the Senate. Then you hear about this story with Russia, and you don't think McConnell was aware of stuff like this? So you've got, on the one hand, Mitch McConnell, who's running for Senate re-election this November in Kentucky. Vote him out, Kentucky. Sitting there and allowing bills to wither on the vine that were passed in the House Democratic side in the House, and blocking them on the Senate floor. And then on the other hand, you've got Donald Trump sitting there telling you, oh, it's going to be rigged, it's going to be rigged. Talk about, I don't want people to panic, but I'm going to scare them to death that the election is rigged, and I'm going to slow down the post office for them so that they don't get their medication, so that senior citizens die. Yeah, but I don't want anybody to panic. The streets are filled with violent thugs, but I don't want anybody to panic. Oh, this white 17-year-old kid killed 2 people. And, he was just defending himself. But I don't want anybody to panic. You get the idea. But here's the bigger idea. You vote this Senate out. This Republican Senate has to go. Mitch McConnell has been blocking everything. He blocked Obama's Supreme Court pick. He blocked lots of Obama's judges that he wanted to put on the federal bench, which is why Trump has been able to put over 200 federal judges on the bench. That's what Mitch McConnell has done. He's violated his own constitutional oath under Article 1. And that's what happens when elections have consequences. which means you've got to get out there and vote and do it early. Flip this Senate. If the Democrats win a net gain of 4 seats, they will have controlled the Senate. They will control the Senate. Mitch McConnell will not be able to block these bills. Donald Trump won't be able to put anybody on the bench. No matter what. A, he won't have the majority, and or B, he won't be in the White House to do it. Because if you're smart, you will be voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So that's the end result of all of this, is to vote, and vote early. Vote just once. No, Donald Trump is telling you to vote twice. And, I want you to, in certain states, vote twice. No, folks. That's illegal. It's illegal. And I guarantee you, these attorney generals in these states are going to prosecute these things. You only vote once in an election. Once. You don't get to vote a second time. This guy does not care about America. And the reporting should be about what he's done to the country, not about other things. If you are fed up of seeing bills being blocked in the Senate, then you know what to do. You go and vote the Republican Senate out. You vote Mitch McConnell out. You vote these Republicans out, up and down the ticket, whether it's from the White House all the way down to doghouse. Are you fed up of seeing Republicans sit around and say nothing after all of these things come out about what Trump's doing to destroy the country, and they sit back and say nothing? Are you fed up of that? Are you fed up of Republicans in the Senate who sit there and acquit a guy who is guilty as sin? Aren't you fed up of that? Are you fed up of the Republicans who sit there and are silent when all of these atrocities are happening? Well, if you're fed up of all those things, you need to go and vote right now. And you need to vote these Republicans out. Elections have consequences. And if you are fed up of judges being put on the bench for life by this guy, and you're fed up of those judges, a number of whom are unqualified and who are only in their 30s. I talked about this a few podcast episodes ago. Then I think it's really time that you go out and vote. Do it now. Elections have consequences.
Your new National Security Advisor, O'Brien, said to you on January 28th, Mr. President, this virus is going to be the biggest national security threat to your presidency. Do you remember that?
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. I'm sure if he said it, I'm sure he said it. Nice guy.
That was Donald Trump on May the 6th of this year. I mean, this is literally 4 months ago. May 6th, 2020. How would you not remember being told that this virus would be the biggest national security threat of his time in the White House? How could you not remember that? January 28th of this year, top secret intelligence briefing, the National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien. By the way, this is his third or fourth National Security Advisor, by the way. Shows you the chaos, right? And the fascistic tendencies to get rid of people. That's what Ruth Ben-Ghiat told you when she was a guest here on this podcast about a month or two ago. I mean, the chaos and the disorder. Notice that he's backed off that message a bit. Now, you haven't heard anything about that lately. Because the biggest chaos and disorder, there is no law and order with Donald Trump. There is only chaos and disorder, and there is death. And the nerve of somebody like this to promote a law and order campaign when he has lied to you and lied to everybody else in the United States of America, and deliberately so, is an absolute farce and a disgrace. And not only that, here's another thing the media is not talking about. This guy should be brought up on crimes against humanity. He should be brought up on charges and be thrown in The Hague to face charges of crimes against humanity. He knew how serious this virus was. He knew that it was quote unquote deadly stuff. And not only did he know this, he admitted it to Bob Woodward. And not only that, at the very same time he was admitting it privately on audio to Bob Woodward, he was out in the public lying to you and telling you that it would go away soon. That is an impeachable offense. That is more than a high crime and misdemeanor. I mean, that goes beyond high crimes and misdemeanors. Nobody mentions that. It's just incredible. You watch these broadcasts and not one of them in the corporate news media mentioned that he should be impeached. Not to the best of my memory. Someone did say that he should resign. Well, yeah, of course. That's the least of it. But he's not going to resign. We have to throw him out of the White House. This next 54 days, I should say. We have 54 voting days left in this election. And I really wish that the media would stop saying, 54 days until the election. No, it's 54 days until election night, when you start to find the results in some of these states. And this notion that people are thinking, it's going to be, and they know it's not all going to be figured out on November the 3rd. We all know that. We've known that for months now. But of course, the people who watch certain Fox News broadcasts and listen to the right-wing hate radio, they're going to be whipped up into a pitchfork lynch mob frenzy. But the rest of us, the 60% of us or so, I think we know a whole lot better than that to fall into that foolish trap. We know that these things never get decided. Nothing ever all gets counted up on one night. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows. Even when President Obama was declared the winner by pretty much a landslide in both elections, they were still counting the votes days later in some of these states. The votes don't even get certified until December the 14th. So this notion that, we need to know the result on the... This is really, you want to talk about destroying the democratic process? That's what this guy and his administration are doing. They are destroying the democratic process. And I put quotes around the words democratic process. This is evil. They do not care about you. But what they do care about is terrorizing you and scaring you. You don't remember this virus being a threat? You don't remember Robert O'Brien telling you that? Mr. Robert O'Brien, Mr. There's no institutionalized racism. And even Donald Trump admits that privately to Bob Woodward. This is a con game being played, but it's a deadly one. And I think people should really resist being shocked. I mean, yeah, it's shocking. I think people should resist being surprised. Did people really think that Donald Trump didn't know how serious this threat was? In January, on the 28th of that month of this year, Robert O'Brien told him, gave him a, quote, jarring warning, according to Woodward. People didn't realize how serious. He knew about this virus since last September. Since a year ago, he knew about this virus. Go look up ABC News and the Times of Israel. The U.S. intelligence briefed them, and they briefed Israel a year ago. He didn't know how serious it was. He was incompetent. You know, again, I've said this on Twitter at the Popcorn REEL. I'm fed up with this nonsense about, oh, he's incompetent. He knows exactly what he's doing. He wants re-election. He wants to stay in power. And he wants to serve his rich masters, which is why he always talks about the stock market. He is talking to 1% of the country when he talks about how good the stock market's doing. He's not talking to the 95, 90%, 99%. He's not talking to the small business owner who has lost her restaurant. He's not talking to the small business owner who has lost her pharmacy. He's not talking to the small business owner who has lost his farm. We have to start wising up here and stop being so surprised. Oh my gosh, he lied about it. Well, it's not that we should be jaded or fatigued, but we should stay focused on voting. You've known for years that this guy is a liar. And even during the summer and earlier on this year, when people kept talking about, oh, he's incompetent around this virus, I told you, this is not incompetence. This is willful and deliberate. And most people ignored what I said because they thought maybe I was crazy, or they didn't want to start getting into a conversation because it would go back and forth. And that's what I think. I mean, I could be completely off base with that. But you see, I keep saying that we've got to go deeper when we talk about this stuff and go contextual, because that's where all of this lies. That's where this sits. There is a deeper context beyond the conversation that I think many people are having, particularly in the corporate news media. That's a given. But this guy should be in The Hague right now. Resignation is the least of this. And if Joe Biden wins, and I think he will, he really should be bringing this guy up on some charges. He should be doing something, whatever it is in his power to do. That's what he should be doing. Because this guy, that's the real deal here, right? The real issue is not that he lied about it. Yeah, that's an issue. But that he deliberately did, and he deliberately downplayed it. And he went out at the same time and lied to the public while he was being honest with Bob Woodward. That's what the real story is. The real story is that as a result of him lying and deceiving and lying to the American public, lying to you, lying to his supporters, hundreds of thousands of people were dying in this country from coronavirus. Oh, don't wear a mask. Oh, you don't have to do that. Oh, this is deliberate. All about re-election. All about the stock market. All about not wanting the public to know because that means he would be voted out. Well, I think it's going to be voted out anyway. But more than all of that, this was murder.
Absolutely. He is responsible for many of these deaths. He is responsible for the fact that our economy is tanking. He is responsible for the dislocation in schools and the fear and children and all the empty spaces around dining room tables and all the loss that we have come through. Because you don't, as a leader, if you tell the American people the truth, tell them what you know, why it's important to take these steps that we know to be the important ones to help deal with this, they're not going to panic. You don't have to jump up and down. That's not how you deliver this kind of message. You do it in a reasoned way that says what we know, what we don't know, what are the absolute basics, things that need to be done, and you don't downplay it. That was irresponsible in the extreme. And frankly, he's not a leader. He's not a leader, and that's what we need at this time. And of course, there's a lot more in the book than just the coronavirus that should make us very worried.
What in his mind could have made him possibly think, if I don't tell the truth about this, people won't notice and I'll get reelected?
Well, that's the way he's approached everything. It's all about him. If he keeps blustering through, and as he did in his press conference, I guess, yesterday and again today, saying, I answered perfectly, there are going to be those who absolutely believe it. But I hope that people understand he is not a leader. This is where you define yourself in leadership when you face a crisis. You're absolutely right. He should have gotten out ahead of it. He could have been ramping up the PPEs, getting more of the ventilators. We still don't have enough out there. If we hit another wave in another month or so when the flu is hitting as well, I know, I've talked to some doctors. They don't have everything they need to deal with that in their offices, much less our hospitals. This is criminal. I mean, it is a major thing. It should be a big thing for his administration. And when you think of all the other ways that he has misled the public, it's hard to pick out one. I mean, go back a week and what he was saying about our military, and he's commander-in-chief. They just keep piling on one another. But I agree. For those who have lost a loved one, those who have gotten sick from this, they ought to be outraged. And frankly, we all ought to be.
That was the former Republican governor, the former governor. That was the former New Jersey governor, Christine Todd Whitman, a Republican. She gets it. And she says what I've been saying now on this podcast for a long time. Donald Trump is not a leader. Donald Trump is a criminal. And what he has done with this coronavirus and what we've known now over the last 24 hours from Bob Woodward's book are the actions of someone who is a criminal. This is criminal. This must be prosecuted. This is an impeachable offense. And as I said, this is a crime against humanity, what Donald Trump has done with this coronavirus. He is a murderer, and he has the blood of 191 plus thousand people on his hands. And that's the way the media should be covering this in the corporate news media. I know they're not going to, but that is the truth. Over 191,000 people have died, and Donald Trump is responsible for each and every one of their deaths. Welcome back. This is the other thing that is really foolish to me, is when I hear people saying, well, Bob Woodward's sitting on information. Shouldn't he be taken to task for that? He should be punished, or he should be taken to task. He knew about this for months. Why didn't he do anything? Well, excuse me. Bob Woodward is an author. Bob Woodward is not a member of the United States government. Oh, well, John Bolton, well, look at him. What about him? Well, John Bolton was a member of government. That's the difference. Bob Woodward was, and still is, an author. He is not a member of the United States government. He is not a member of an administration. He is a private author, public figure, award-winning public figure. But he's a private person. He's not a government official. He's an author, public figure, but private in the sense that he's not a government official. He's not in the government. He has no responsibility, quite frankly, to come forward with any of this information. John Bolton, however, is quite a different story. John Bolton, in January of this year, when presented with the opportunity to testify as part of the House impeachment trial that was being held, or rather the trial being held in the Senate that the House impeachment managers were trying, John Bolton, who was the national security advisor to Donald Trump in 2018, he got fired that year, or he resigned that year, whatever it was. John Bolton had a responsibility, even though he was no longer in that administration, to come forward. In fact, he had even more responsibility to come forward since he was no longer in the administration. John Bolton was more interested in selling his book, so he decided to hold off from presenting some very important information that would have definitely, I think, swayed some Republicans. Maybe not the number needed, but it may have brought one more Republican over, which probably wouldn't have been worth anything. It wouldn't have been, because you needed to get 3 or 4 of them, as I remember. Actually, you needed more than 3 or 4. You needed to have a 2/3 vote to remove Donald Trump. So you needed 66, or I believe 67 senators to remove Donald Trump from office. That would have been the conviction. 67 senators are needed. And you probably would have brought over at least 5 more Republicans. Probably. Maybe not. Maybe you wouldn't. Maybe Mitt Romney would have still been the only Republican. But John Bolton is the guy that people did. They rightly attacked John Bolton in the media and elsewhere on social media. They rightly so. He rightly was attacked, and he should have been. He was a government official. He was in that White House. He had all of that information. He should have come forward. But that would have put a damper on his book sales. And of course, he's thinking about his own end, which means I will lose money if I reveal this stuff that could help the American public or help this trial. So he was selfish. He thought about himself. That's the guy that I have an issue with. The room where it happened. And he says, well, I'm not going to vote this. I mean, please, anybody who tells you, whether they're on social media or whether they're John Bolton or Ice Cube or any bloomin' body, who tells you that they're not going to vote or they don't know who to vote for and they don't. That is that's a tactic of voter suppression. They are trying to sow confusion. You know damn well who to vote for. It's obvious who you vote for. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's obvious. How do you try to placate confusion when it's obvious what's happened in this country? You've got an economy in the toilet. You've got small businesses, they're all shuttered. You've got unemployment at a record high. You still have over 20 million jobs lost in this country. You've got 40 million people out of work. You've got a guy who wants to cut Social Security and Medicare and is trying to get rid of pre-existing conditions in Obamacare right now as I speak, and has been trying for 2 years. What is there to be confused about? And you're sitting there telling people, oh, well, I don't know who I'm going to vote for. Ice Cube's rich. John Bolton's rich. None of these guys is going to be materially affected by whomever walks into that White House in January. None of them's they're going to be quite pleased, quite frankly, to have Donald Trump in there if it is he, God forbid. And I think it's going to be Joe Biden. But my point is that consider the source. When you have people online telling you this garbage, ask yourself, who are they? And ask yourself, why would they be telling you this? and quite frankly, move on and commit to voting early. You have two choices. And forget the libertarians, forget writing in somebody. Forget all these other third-party people, because there's at least 6 people running for president. The no-namers, why vote for the no-namers who aren't going to win anything? I keep telling you. Very few people are undecided in this election. So the issue is not Bob Woodward. The issue is John Bolton. And the issue is Jim Mattis, who was the defense secretary. And the issue is Dan Coats, who was the director of national intelligence during this administration of Donald Trump. I mean, you had Jim Mattis worried about nuclear war. The man was sleeping in his clothes. Sleeping in his clothes. Worried. Just in case the nuclear codes would be used. He was that concerned. This is part of the book that Bob Woodward wrote, Rage, which is coming out on Tuesday. And yes, I will be reading it. I look forward to reading it. And this is the thing that's ridiculous. Jim Mattis, a general who served with distinction in the military and who was the Secretary of Defense, and who has come out, I believe, in the Atlantic over the last couple of months and warned of the danger. So he did, I believe, come out in the Atlantic and wrote about how dangerous that this guy is, Donald Trump. Did not come out back in February or January of this year or whenever it was last year, or, well, he was out of office in 2018. I think he was dismissed in early 2019 or something. I forget. But the point is that this guy was sleeping in his clothes, worried about nuclear codes in North Korea and worried about there being a nuclear war. And he did not warn the American public. And some of you are out here going, oh, but Bob Woodward should be doing something. Screw that. Screw Bob Woodward should be doing something. He is doing something. He's letting you know what these corrupt criminal people are doing or didn't do or should have done or wouldn't do. That's his public service, quite frankly. And if he makes a buck off of it, so be it. Bob Woodward, again, is not a government official. Jim Mattis was. Dan Coats was. And the idea that Dan Coats and Jim Mattis would be sitting there talking to each other, oh, he's unfit. Oh, he's dangerous. Oh, he doesn't realize when a lie is a lie and the truth is the truth. He has no idea. I mean, this is what they're talking about. This is in 2018 or 19, I believe. Both of them ended up resigning. But none of them said a darn thing. None of them. Both of them are Republicans. None of them said anything. This is a pattern with the Republicans. Jeff Flake resigned. He left the Senate from Arizona, Senator of Arizona. And then he starts speaking out. Oh, now, a couple of weeks ago he gave this speech. I'm voting for Joe Biden. Yeah, he may have made a speech or two on the Senate floor. But when it came down to it, he voted with Donald Trump. Granted, Mitt Romney did too for much of the time, but in my view, Mitt Romney is different in a way, only because he stood up on abuse of power to get rid of this guy in the White House. That's principle. Not to mention he actually was the only Republican I've ever heard of in the Senate who marched in a Black Lives Matter protest. And some people will call that symbolism. Go ahead and call it symbolism. The fact of the matter is that at least, I mean, this guy has a lot of demons and a lot of things about him in terms of his record and his corporatism that I have no love for at all. But he's the only one that shows any inclination to open his mouth and speak out while he is still in office as a Republican senator against this Trump party. All of these other Republicans have quit, turned tail and run. And very, very, very few of them have spoken up or spoken out. The silence has been deafening on that side of the aisle. A few of them have spoken out, but you've got to think about this. The ones that have spoken out, for the most part, never had any real power in that administration to begin with. Scaramucci spoken out. Did he have power in that administration in any real way? No. He only lasted 10 days. 10 days. And I'm not besmirching Scaramucci, but he never had any real power in that administration. And you see him all over the television. And he's speaking out. Good. I'm glad he is. But what about Jim Mattis? He had real power. He was the bloomin' defense secretary. What about Dan Coates? He had real power. He was the director of national intelligence. The heartbeat. No one broke wind without his say-so. He knew everything that was going on in the bloomin' country. But neither of them says a word about this. They talk about it. Well, he's unfit. It's like it's a parade of crazy. Well, he's unfit. Oh, well, he's unfit and he's dangerous. Oh, and well, he lies. But what good is it, the two of you having a quiet little fireside freakout, if you do not share that information with the American public? Heck, I mean, we can all see that this guy, Donald Trump, is unfit. We all knew that. And some of you who are listening to me voted for him, and you knew that. Hillary Clinton told you this during the debates in 2016. She told you this during the campaign that she ran in 2016. And some of you didn't pay attention to that. You didn't care. Not some of you listening now. Maybe some of you listening didn't vote for her. You voted for someone else, a third party. Well, now's your time to make amends for that and vote for Joe Biden. That's what you have to do now. And if you don't like Joe Biden 100%, you keep pushing him. There's never a politician that you're going to agree with 100% of the time. Heck, you don't even agree with your spouse 100% of the time. Why should you expect that of a politician? We can't afford to be lazy. You've got Bob, I mean, this is crazy. You've got Jim Mattis and Dan Coates, two Republicans, talking about, well, he's unfit and he's dangerous and he's got no moral compass. Well, why the hell aren't you guys telling the American public? Why the hell aren't you guys putting out a statement or going before the cameras? Even now, they're not saying anything before the cameras. Even now. You have this thing with the military being disrespected by Donald Trump. Where the hell is James Kelly? John Kelly, is cursing out people like Frederica Wilson, who is the congresswoman down there in Florida. Cursing her out, calling her names. Right? But he's lost his tongue when it comes to responding about this military stuff that's happening. Disrespecting the military. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Now, that story is already being pushed into the background because of what you're hearing now from Woodward. I just think it's so ridiculous. You've got Mattis and Coates. Well, and this is after they resigned. After Mattis had resigned, he and Coates discussed whether they might, this is from CNN.com, whether they might have to, quote, stand up and speak out, quote, and take collective action, end quote. He's dangerous, Mattis said. He's unfit. Mattis is quoted as saying, quote, we can't let the country keep going, end quote, on this course, Woodward writes. This is dangerous. So wait a minute. We can't let the country keep going on this course, and you continue to do that and you don't say anything to the public? I mean, that's really where the story is, not Bob Woodward. Oh, Bob Woodward's sitting on this. That's nonsense. And Bob Woodward is not a government official. And I really wish people would just get that into their heads. That's really annoying. Give me a break. This is what I'm talking about. Having some context around conversations like this. And that's important for the country. When you've got people who know that someone's a danger, who know that they are a major threat, who know you're a blink of an eye away from nuclear war, perhaps. You're sleeping in your blooming clothes. You're going to the National Cathedral in Washington, Jim Mattis, and praying daily about the state of the blooming country because of this guy in the White House, Donald Trump. And you're not going to the American public and saying anything about this? And this is after you resigned? I think that makes you cowards. Meanwhile, you got Donald Trump all over television, bloviating. You got him on talking to Woodward and, oh yes, and I lied and I purposely misled and I downplayed the virus and I downplayed it. And I still do. Yeah, that doesn't take any guts for him to lie and tell you that he is destroying the country and killing Americans. And yet you guys can't get it together in your heads after you've resigned? God, dearie me. I mean, that makes you guys cowards. Just like the rest of these Republicans, they're cowards. None of them convicted this guy 7 months ago when they should have stood up and done so. And now you've thrown it to us because you guys have lazily turned a blind eye and a deaf ear. You have abdicated your responsibility. And I remember Lamar Alexander, who's resigning from the Senate come January. He'll be gone. And he said, well, we've got to leave it to the American public. They can decide. No, that's your decision. It was your time in February of this year, Lamar, to bloomin' do the right thing and convict this guy of impeachment crimes, abuse of power, obstruction of justice. That was your moment. The Senate is where you sit. But we will have to do the legwork now. We have 54 days to vote. 54 days. We can vote on one of these next 54 days. And I hope that you do it early. You must do this early. This election must be a landslide for Joe Biden. I mean, if this information that has come out now doesn't galvanize you to vote early, nothing will. If this information that's come out now in this book by Bob Woodward doesn't galvanize you to tell your friends and your family to vote early, and doesn't galvanize you to check your voter registration every week, and doesn't galvanize you to make sure that you're registered, and doesn't galvanize you to apply for an absentee ballot right freaking now, then nothing will. Then you have accepted the bottom. And you've accepted the bottomless pit. Let's get real. Let's be proactive. And let's vote for a better way forward. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.